Hello and welcome to calculating the surface area of a cylinder. So a cylinder is a pretty recognizable shape, which when you unroll a cylinder, calculating the surface area of that, you might have been surprised to realize that it is just a rectangle and then the two circles that are the top and the bottom. So if you were to cover a can of soup or SpaghettiOs, this is how we would calculate that area needed. A can of Coke isn't exactly a cylinder because of that lipped top, but it's almost a cylinder. So that'll give us a good approximation. So if we wanted to know like the bark around a log, this is how we would calculate that. So let's try example number 1. Let's calculate the surface area of a cylinder. So we're actually not going to calculate the exact surface area. That would involve leaving pi in the answer. So what we're going to do is we're going to find an approximate surface area of the cylinder, and we're going to use the pi button, and we're going to round our answers to the nearest tenth. So here we go. So the first thing that we have to recognize is what we need. So we need 2 times pi. We know what pi is. We're just going to use our pi button on our calculator. And the radius. So the radius of this cylinder is half of the diameter. They gave us the diameter is 4, so the radius is half of that, which is 2. And we also need to know the height of this cylinder, which is 7. Once we have that, we can just substitute that information into our formula. So surface area equals 2 times pi times the radius, which is 2 squared, plus 2 times pi times the radius again, which is 2, times the height, which is 7. Once we have that information, which you should write down, always write that down first. Once we have that information, we can actually put that right into Desmos. This will give us the area of the two circles, this first part, and the second part will give us the area of the rectangle wrapping around the cylinder. So once you have that, let's go ahead and go to Desmos, and we can type that information into our calculator. So here we go. So we've got 2 times pi, I'm going to use the pi button, times the radius, which is 2 squared, plus 2 times pi times the radius again, which is 2, times the height, which is 7. Okay, and if we round that answer to the nearest tenth, this is the tens place, the zero's in the tens place, and then that 9 will round that up to a 1. So 113.1. So go back to my slide here. So that is going to be a surface area of 113.1, again rounded to the nearest tenth using the pi button. So 113.1 square inches for the surface area around that cylinder. Let's try another. Number 2. So again, all we need to know is the radius and the height. So the radius, they happen to give us that this time, is 10, and the height is 13. So once we have that information, we can just put it into our surface area formula. It's very important to write that down. So I'm going to write it down here. Surface area equals 2 pi times the radius, which is 10, squared, plus 2 pi times the radius, which is 10, times the height, which is 13. Have that information written down, and then we can put that into our calculator. So the radius was, I'm just going to leave this all in Desmos from the last problem, just replace the values that have changed. The radius is now 10. So replace both the radiuses with 10, and the height was 13 instead of 7. So now I have my answer of 145 4, 5, and then that 3 is going to keep the 1 the same if I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, so 0.1. So I can record that here. So our surface area is 1,445 and 1/10 square feet for our solution. Okay, you guys are going to try these problems on your own. I recommend that you use your pi button on your calculator and round to the nearest tenth. If you do not, your answers will be slightly different than mine, which is okay. Just make sure that you recognize that they will be slightly different. Okay, check your work.